sorry about this, that should communicate for investors. At the level of young innovators or even labs, is it feasible? And if it is, how would you go about it?
So the question is about philanthropy and how does it relate to individual investigators. And actually, I think increasingly you're going to have some superstructure that has scale and the ability to create a portfolio of young scientists who are receiving this kind of money. So there has to be some kind of process. I've thought hard, and indeed there are some experiments on the web to do crowdsourcing for individual investigators, but that really has not, I think, gotten to the point where you can get $200,000 or money that really would help you support a postdoc or someone who's going to work on a project. So part of the goal at the Stem Cell Institute, part of the goal at some of the other larger cross-university or cross-institution experiments is to really create something that a philanthropist can then invest in and then have the money allocated by people who are far more likely to pick the great teams and the great projects.
But in order for the philanthropists to get money, it would be nice to have some kind of a tax break, right? So I think that would have to stop in the past.
Question for Swangard. What percentage of grants are funded out of all the applicants? Because it sounded like quite a few people would want to apply for this. And could you mention something just about the decision, instead of peer review process? Who's actually making the decision on what gets funded?
So the question was, what are the success rates in terms of applicants? What percentage? We funded about probably 120 of them, I believe. So that's not true. For phase 1s, we funded 10% of them, the ones that were received. For phase 2 applications, we funded about 18% of the applications that were received. There was some variance between the SBIR program and the STTR program. Again, the STTR is the program that requires a collaboration between a university and a small business. One thing that has happened over the last several years is our numbers of STTR applications have gone way down. So our success rate for STTRs this past year was in the 20 to 25% range. That's fully a function of just not getting enough good applications. So we're encouraging folks who kind of fit that mold to look at STTR as one of the options. On the contract side, it's a little bit different. It's topic dependent in terms of what the percentage is. Areas like we have a focus solicitation in the area of companion diagnostics that probably had about a 20% success rate. But again, that's going to vary based on the specific topic. In terms of how we make decisions, everything goes through peer review. So that is made up of a panel of your peers, people who are experts in the science on a project, and people who have, in addition to scientists, there's also typically industry people that serve on those panels, and they score and rank the proposals. And then once they do that, all the scores come to me on the program side, and then we evaluate the projects, and we make a decision on whether we think we would like to put the project forward for funding.
Question for Roger. Bill described an overall 60% failure rate for venture investment. So can you talk about what you're doing differently in organizations on that, or help people avoid that 60% failure? What are you doing structurally that's different than what you're
So it's still early in the life of the fund. Oh, sorry. So the question is, so what are we doing, as we've heard about a 60% failure rate in the venture community, what are we doing for our fund that will help us avoid that 60% failure rate? And it's still early in the life of the fund, so we can still get there to the 60%. And since we are co-investing with the venture community, and that is the statistic that's there, I don't know that we're going to be that different at the end of the day. Obviously, every time we go in, we think that this is a great deal, and we try and use every unfair advantage that we have. so, when we think about the diligence that we can do with the clinical base that we have to pull from, when we think about the fact that, I don't have to compete for deal flow with a bunch of different venture capitalists, who are really competing on, hey, I'm a great venture capitalist and I have money. I have proprietary deal flow that we really see first, and so we can structure things in a way that we think will give us an advantage down the road. But, at the end of the day, it is venture capital.
One thing that you should pay attention to here is there's math that has to work out, by which I mean the final value that can be created and captured has to somehow be related to how many stages, how much time, and how much money has to go into it. So an angel deal that would only take $1 million or $2 million, it has to take a relatively small amount of time in order to get to the point where you can capture the value, which by implication means that it's a different kind of project than something that's going to cure type 1 diabetes. So we're talking about a broad range of projects, and therefore you have to align with the sources so that you get not only the first two sources, but you have a path to the rest of the money. So I think the statement was, you don't want to have a bridge, or you don't want to have a pier, you want to have a bridge. So you have to think through all of those stages and why someone would give you money at each of those stages.
I also wanted to just mention when we were on the subject earlier of foundations and venture philanthropy, tax implications are one motivation, but if you think about a foundation that's already tax exempt, there's another motivation in that they need to give away 5% of every year. And so one of the things that is increasingly interesting is what they're calling program-related investments, which are actually investments, could be in a company, it could be in a for-profit company, but it counts against that 5% that they need to give away every year because it is related to, if they're interested in advancing, cystic fibrosis and they invest in a cystic fibrosis foundation, a cystic fibrosis company, as long as it's structured properly, that can actually count against that 5%, and that's something that is of interest to foundations, especially when the stock market's not returning, 10 or 20% a year.
Well, on a related question, for entrepreneurs who want to seek funding, either from a philanthropist or the disease foundations, vis-a-vis getting traditional funding from VCs, how do they need to position themselves differently? What do they keep in mind when they approach these alternative sources of funding?
So I'll take a stab at it, and others can chime in. Raising philanthropic money is sometimes you imagine that you're begging. You need knee pads. You have a beneficent person, and your job is to touch their heartstrings. That's true, but I think the main thing you're in the business of doing is solving their problem. And their problem turns out to be, how do I give the money away as effectively and as competently as I earned it? They're going to give the money away. And what they want to know is that there's a high return potential on their investment. And return potential, we've mentioned it several times because I think it's a recurring theme, which is it going to get leveraged by other human and financial capital so that my initial, if you will, donation gets multiplied by 10 or 20 if the project works, or by 1,000. And then I can have the kind of impact that I would like to have. So it's not that they're trying to get a financial return, they're not trying to make 1,000 times their money, but they're trying to get 1,000 times the impact. They want to advance these technologies. They want to help patients here and everywhere. So you're in the business of trying to get them to feel like an investment in you has that kind of potential, and that they'll feel as good about having given you the money as they would about giving Mark Zuckerberg the money. Now, frankly, it's hard to feel as good as that actually feels, but you get the picture.
I also think that if you're trying to position yourself, if you think of if you're giving Mass General the money, or you're giving it to a company. Well, what does Mass General do really well? We do basic science really well. We do patient care. There's a lot of things we do really well. We don't develop drugs. We don't take things forward, and we take it to a certain point, but at that point it really needs to move into a company to do development. We are great at research, and we're doing a little bit more development because we have to, but companies do development. And so as you're talking to a foundation, you say, look, if you want to cure this disease, then it has to be developed at some point. And that's really your competitive advantage versus some of these potential other places that they could give their money.
It's not. It also depends on the mission of the foundation too. I mean, in some cases, there are foundations that are very focused on a very narrow market, and that's why they exist. So they want to achieve the ultimate goal of getting it out to patients, but the market isn't necessarily the big driver. It's trying to set an unmet need, and that's something at the NCI, particularly the SBR program, that we struggle with sometimes, because you want to go for that home run type technology with a huge market, but then at the same time, there's some really exciting new projects that have that service the market for a very small number of patients that if the NCI doesn't invest in it, nobody else will. So there really is that balance in between the two.